Hello everyone, my name is Chris Budd. I'm one of the subject matter experts and founders of Isolocity. We are a quality management software that helps cannabis companies across the world automate their QMS compliance. That's what we do, and we make headaches go away. Jorgen?
Yeah, my name is Jürgen Bickel. I'm co-founder and managing director of Stores & Bickel. We are producing vaporizers, as maybe one or the other know. The most famous one is our Volcano vaporizer, but also a few handheld products.
Hello, everybody. My name is Louis Koski. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Metric. We're a leading track and trace provider in the United States. We provide track and trace to 23 different government agencies across the country and in Guam. We've been spending quite a bit of time investing into a better understanding of what's happening here in the European market over the last 18 months. So really looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natal Partansky. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Sorting Robotics. We build robots for cannabis manufacturers, our main one being the Gico robot, a device that infuses joints and blunts and pre-rolls with cannabis concentrate. Among that, we do a bunch of other various robotics technologies, vision systems, vaporizer filling. And yeah, it's interesting being here in Berlin and meeting everyone in the different sectors. So looking forward to talk.
Hello. Hi, guys. My name is Hans. I'm Regional Director for CSAL for Europe. So CSAL is part of SMORE. SMOREtech is the largest vape equipment manufacturer in the world. And CSAL is their brand, which is dedicated to making hardware for vaporizers for distillates, live resin, rosin, high viscosity extracts, basically. So thanks.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And today I have the pleasure of being the moderator of this High Tech, High Times panel. All right, guys. So talking about where technology is going, not just from the producer's perspective, but also the end consumers. How does technology need to change to help this industry become more successful and safer for the consumer? Jorgen, I'll let you nail this one, and then we'll go along.
Yeah, of course, a vaporizer is a high-tech device. Yeah, we know that from a design perspective, you need to be very careful what you are doing. People at the end of the day are inhaling. This is so the vapor you are producing is getting into the lungs. So yeah, and on the technology side, it is very important to have a very high quality. And of course, technology goes through everything you do. It goes through your design. It goes through your production process. Things like traceability are extremely important. In our case, to produce a medical device, it is the certification is very important, like ISO 13485. We have now new certifications available from UL 8139. It's a new standard who is used for vaporizers, what we follow, at least with every new product. And of course, on the customer side, of course, all of our new products, they have coming with an app. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're always able to control your device with an app, but you're also able to get statistics out of it. Yeah, you can see how long you used it, what is your main temperature you're using it. And of course, it gives also feedback to us once we get a device back on hand to see how it was used, yeah, and how was it if there was a failure, what was the failure. So it improves the experience for the customer, and it improves our database to make better products in the future.
Okay, great. Luce, before I get to you, it's interesting. So it's kind of like the car model, right, where the cars are now analyzing how you're driving it and feeding that information back to the OEMs. So what type of improvements have you guys made based on key data points that you've collected? Give me like an example of a product enhancement that you've done that has met consumer trends or uses.
Yeah, in our case, what we have seen a lot of things how people are using it and which temperature they are using it. Right. Yeah, this was one of the main things we got back. And but at the end, this is what the customer can do by himself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. All right, Louis. Now, taking a look at the back-end infrastructure of any producer, and being from North America and being immersed in that market, what are certain things that you are seeing or that you guys are predicting at Metric that the evolution of data flow from seed to consumer, but how are we making those more efficient as well for the cannabis producers?
Yeah, so those of you who don't know, Metric is a platform that government uses to collect data from the supply chain. So every actor that is active along the supply chain in a commercial market, it contributes data along the supply chain and ends up being this massive data set that government uses to help inform policy and kind of evolve it over time. So what we've seen happen is that not only does that data set really help government be able to create some efficiencies, but it also serves businesses really well. And we think the future of it is the potential for information sharing, where businesses and technological solutions that are contributing or participating in the platform can co-create value with one another along the entire supply chain. So when it comes to ways in which we're creating efficiencies in supply chains, first and foremost, the data that's collected in track and trace systems is intended to be collected during the normal course of business, when businesses are collecting data that's important for making business decisions anyway. And then second, because there's been somewhat of a reluctance from very large technical companies to get involved in the cannabis industries, in particular in North America and in the US, where it's still illegal federally, there's been a lot of innovation and a lot of new tech startups that are providing a lot of the services to businesses to help streamline some of the reporting requirements that go to the government, but also be able to streamline and better inform business decisions that they make throughout the entirety of the supply chain. So it ends up being an ecosystem of data collection that's capable of being shared amongst many different actors within the system.
And to sort of build off that notion of the tech ecosystem within an organization, the one thing that I've noticed compared to different industries, and we work in other industries, is that the tech setup at cannabis companies can get a little overcomplicated. What are certain things that individuals or business owners should be aware of when they want to get into a technology package? Is it looking at the ecosystem that it plays with? Integrations, are those important? Maybe we could just build a little bit on that.
Yeah, so we actually see both. We see businesses that are still collecting or contributing to data via spreadsheets or even handwriting, and then later adding it into a system, and other companies that have pretty sophisticated internal systems that they use. And because it's important to create efficiencies within the marketplace, a lot of businesses have worked with their software providers to actually integrate in with the system. So for example, in our system, there's been over 500 companies that integrate with Metric to grab information and get it out of our system, but also to put information back into it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's talk about automation a little bit, shall we? So what trends and evolutions are we going to be able to see how cannabis producers actually produce cannabis? Well, maybe we can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the automation in the cannabis industry is, I would say, still in its nascent form, because the industry itself is still kind of figuring things out. And to Lewis's point, how he's seen some companies be lightly software driven and some being very heavy. I would say right now there's a pretty high variability in how much people use automation to manufacture finished goods. And it plays into the fact that there's so much change in what the end product is going to be, that it's not like a traditional manufacturing and not traditional automation where you can build these huge facilities that are going to pump out hundreds of thousands of units an hour, because there's no volume that's like that. So I think we're going to start seeing automation that pops up, that's things that we make, where all of the devices are made for high variability, because this plant is something that we're still discovering. We're still trying to understand what are going to be the staple SKUs in every dispensary, what are going to be the staple SKUs in every market. And we're also going to start seeing them become smarter. So less like dumb automation that's huge and massive treadmills of products coming down the line, and more small variable IoT systems. Like everything that we make is built off of a database, and all that database is going to be synced with the ERP system of the company, and then it's going to be synced with Metric, and it's going to be a much smarter manufacturing, because we're not starting this industry in the 1300s or 1960s. It's like we have the internet, and we should embrace it as we are building out your automation.
But let's face it, though, people were still smoking weed 1,300 years ago.
Yeah, they still were smoking
Yeah,
weed.
of course they were. All right. No, good question, though, on that. So talking about the automation, and some people in this room may have cannabis facilities that produce, grow, extract, etc. What are key data points they should be looking at in their operation to inform them that maybe it's time to move towards an automated system for production? Like, what are those key data points that they should be paying attention to understand that the ROI is real and it's there, and they just need to adopt technology to become efficient? Could you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, so me and my team, we actually built a cannabis co-packing company in Oakland and ran it for 3 years, Oakland, California, in the United States. And it was surprising because, we were a robotics company kind of sponsoring the development of this Bay Area service provider, and we didn't use a lot of automation in the beginning. We did it all by hand to make sure we could understand what exactly the traditional market was doing. And then our decision making on like what we wanted to automate, what was the most important, was when the balance between throughput and the ability to hire became so difficult that it made sense just to automate things. Because the workforce, at least in North America, Canada, United States, I think the culture has shifted from people wanting to sit down and do knockbox their joints and finish them by hand. It's difficult to hire for that position. And so when you get to the volume level where you can't find, another 20 people, then it's time to make the change into automation.
Yeah.
And it's most of the time better to do it later.
Yeah.
Even though, I would hope you guys buy my machine the first day you decide to start a cannabis company. But the best time is really when you hit that break-even point, that breaking point between can I hire more people and can I maintain the quality by having a higher amount of volume. And usually that comes like in the pre-roll range if you're doing more than 10,000 pre-rolls a week, in the co-packing range, like for jars and bags of flour, if you're doing more than 3,000 to 5,000 a week, it just doesn't make sense to do those things by hand. Yeah. But along with the variability that I mentioned before, you don't really know what you're going to do when you first start.
Right.
And I've seen many cannabis companies, Canada, the United States, they'll spend $5, $10, $15 million building out this whole facility, having this whole idea of what they're going to do, and then they turn on the lights and they don't use half the facility. Or it turns out the market has shifted and this product that they were working on just doesn't make sense anymore, or the form factor has changed, or there's this new SKU that's coming out.
Right.
So I would say start very slow, look at that breaking point, and then automate aggressively from there. Right.
Yeah, and if you look at any industry, and the companies who are the most successful in that industry are the ones that have been able to reduce the direct labor component the most. So the more capital asset heavy your company is for your production throughput, the more competitive you're going to be. And the more consistency you're going to have, and standardization in product output, which is important. Okay, let's take this to mobile devices and vape products. And so Hans, what's the next step for consumer interaction with their vape product, their vape mechanism?
Yeah, well, I would like to look at this a little bit from a different perspective.
Sure.
More from a distribution perspective, maybe, for D2C products, which are sold to end users. And there's been a large shift over the last 2 decades, I would say, from the digitalization of sales, really, where sales shifted from brick and mortar stores, physical stores, to online sales, which is really across all categories, not necessarily specific to cannabis or high-end, vaporizers, but in B2B transactions, for example, a wholesaler today probably needs an online portal where his customers, his retailers can actually place their orders. Otherwise, he's going to be in a very difficult spot. And they like to place their orders outside of the regular shop working hours. So, but there's also consequences on D2C transactions when you sell to end users, which is probably even more important. And it's a fundamental issue, really, which have arisen through this digitalization of sales, really. Maybe let's take an example. Let's let's say Jürgen decides to buy a new vaporizer, and he walks into his favorite vape shop and vaporizer store, head shop in Tüttling, and there's the sales guy behind the counter. Let's say his name is Dave, and Dave shows Jürgen all the different vaporizers that are available, the advantages, disadvantages. He tries to understand what Jürgen really needs and wants, and at the end of the pitch, after 45 minutes, Jürgen has decided he wants to buy the new PAX vaporizer, okay? And the price tag is 250 euros, okay? 250 euros, so Jürgen has decided that's the one he wants. What he's going to do? What he's going to do before actually, finishing this transaction, completing the transaction, handing over the money to Dave? What he's going to do? Maybe in the audience. What is Jürgen going to do before paying actually those 250 euros in the store? No one? Check the price? How is he going to check the price? He's going to Google it, of course. I would argue 80% of customers will Google the price before putting down 250 euros. So that's what Jürgen does. He actually Googles the price and he finds it at 185 euros on Amazon. So Dave, if he sells the device at 250 euros, he's probably going to make 80 bucks on it. Let's say 80 bucks. If he to sell it to Jürgen to complete the transaction, he probably needs to sell it at 190, maybe 200. So he makes 30 bucks maybe. And Dave is not very happy about this. He spent an hour with Jürgen already in his stores where other customers are waiting. And he might reconsider actually restocking that item. And in return, he's not going to place an order to his wholesaler, and his wholesaler not going to place an order to the manufacturer. So at the end of the day, it actually becomes a problem for everyone involved. And there's, most large online retailers today, they actually work with pricing bots. So these pricing bots, it's a software which basically tracks online pricing for a certain item, a specific item, multiple times during the day. And what the software also can do is to adjust the pricing for an online store, for the specific online store, to actually beat the competitive pricing, beat the competitors. And what this ends up doing is actually downward spiral, where the price goes from 250 to 240 to 230 to 200, and just keeps going down. And it's a problem for retailers, obviously, because they don't make their margins anymore. Even that online retailer who might sell it at 185 is going to make 15 bucks on the sale. Is that worth the hustle? Probably not. So it's, a lot of you are probably from the United States, where you got the MAP pricing, MAP, minimum advertised pricing. That's, if I understand correctly, that's you can have agreements with retailers where they adhere to sell at a certain retail price, and if they don't, you can send them warning letters. So this is something in Europe. It's very different. It's called price fixing, and it's actually illegal. So it's actually sanctioned with heavy fines. So it's nothing you can really do. But there's other ways, you can come up with to influence and impact that pricing, actually. I really need to put a disclaimer here. So the vaporizer brand I used earlier, and the price is obviously completely made up, right? Don't take this too serious, please. But I just wanted to illustrate the fundamental issue of this. And there's certain ways of how to control that through selective distribution. Dave might be saying, I really like you, Jürgen. I'm going to give you a free grinder, I'm going to give you a cleaning kit and a carrying case, and he's still going to sell it for 230 and still going to make good money on it, So, but different companies, different approaches of how to actually tackle that problem. For example, like Apple, they mostly decided to sell direct now, where they might work with certain retailers who they only give 10% margins. So they don't actually have the latitude to play with the pricing that much, otherwise they would be operating at loss. So it's a fundamental issue. It's kind of coming up over the last 10, 15, 20 years probably, and it's becoming more and more a problem, and people trying to figure out how to deal with this.
So this is an example of where certain enhancements in technology is actually hurting the industry.
Yeah, we're providing challenges, let's call it this way. I mean, there's obviously also advantages of digitalization of sales, It's easier for people who live in the countryside to get products,
Yeah, of course. Okay, we got a few questions from the audience. We're going to handle those first, and then we're just going to jump into a general Q&A afterwards. And thank you for those who submitted these questions ahead of time. First question is, how will the vape industry be regulated in Germany's medical market? So who wants to take that?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, the vape industry, of course, if you want to be in the German medical market, you must have a medical device. And medical devices are strongly regulated. And recently we have strong regulations through the new MDR, the medical device regulations from the EU. Yeah, we by ourselves, we have, for example, next week, we have 3 days audit by the TUV.
That's fun.
With 2 auditors, yeah, that's fun. We are in preparation for
You need isoscalosity for that.
for this fund, so it's a highly regulated, and it's a hurdle. On the one hand, once you have done the hurdle, not everybody else can do it. If you look to the vaporizers worldwide, Stars and Bickel is the only one who really has done it. A few are claiming it, but they are not available on the market. So we have done it, but it's a constant effort you have to do to be really compliant with a medical device. And it is something different if there is a medical device or not. It's not only the device itself who is different, it's the whole management of the company. And of course, it has also proved that it really has a therapeutic effect. Yeah, and all this together is not so easy, but you can do it if you're a well-management company.
Yeah, and I think that's let's just kind of build some clarification there. Just because a company says they are ISO 13485 or 9001 certified, it doesn't mean the product is certified. The product certification is a completely different certification, like the UL certification or CSA if you're in Canada, for example. So one of those things that if you see that a company is boasting that they're 9001 or 13485 certified, that doesn't necessarily mean their product is good. I just wanted to make sure, being the ISO guy in the room, that everyone knows the stipulations there. But that's a good point. But 1345, I think it's important because it is a medical device. It is delivering a...
Yeah, 13485 is one of 3 things you have to do. You must have the quality management audited according to that. Then the device itself must be, according to, depending which device you have, regulated. And finally, the therapeutic effect must be proven.
Okay, all right. So thank you guys. So another question that has come up, and maybe this is something, Louis, I'd love you to handle this one, but how can software and hardware integrations decrease cost in cultivation activities?
Increase cost?
No, decrease. Sorry, decrease costs.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple different technologies that can certainly help along those lines. So, for example, in our system, we use radio frequency ID tags to tag every plant and then every package or batch of product that comes from those inputs into the supply chain system. And then those tags can actually be read from a distance. So in terms of taking an inventory, if you have just a barcode or a QR code, you can usually read one tag at a time, and you have to get awfully close to the tag to be able to scan and pull that information. With radio frequency ID tags, you can use a reader that's kind of like the same size as a smartphone with a handle, and you can take an inventory relatively quickly as long as you get within 7 meters of the actual RFID tag. And you can pull the information off, and then that unique identifier that's on the tag get you acquainted with all of the data that has been added into the system from that. So just kind of like put that in perspective. If you had your phone with a handle on it, and every person in this room had an RFID tag that they were holding up, if you walked up this aisle and down this aisle, we'd probably be able to read most every RFID tag in this, and you'd be able to do it in whatever the time was it took you to walk around the...
That's incredible. And that all gets fed automatically into Metric.
Exactly.
Wow.
Can I expand on that as well?
Yeah, guys, please.
Yeah. So we were this co-packer in Oakland, and we started building a bunch of technology to help our customers and actually like help our in-house production. And so we did a lot of hand trimming for people. And so when you trim cannabis, as you all know, it doesn't always have the same yield, right? Some strains are a little bit larvier, some strains are a lot more dense. And depending on what strain it is, the actual veg time and flowering time is very different. And then to compound the complexity of these different strains, some of them are more exotic and some will go for different pricing. So you take all these variables together. And so what we did is we built this very awesome ERP system for trimming. And I think we could talk about later if that's important for people. But what it did was something very cool, right? So you would give a trimmer a pound of flower. And let's say the yield from that flower was 65%. And then you give them another strain, same trimmer, same process of trimming, but the pound yield the kilogram yield from there is is maybe 55%. So you're getting roughly 15%, 10% less in this other one. However, the pricing and the market pricing for strain number 2 is significantly higher. But as it turns out, it actually takes a longer time to grow in like an indoor grow. Maybe it's 14 weeks compared to 11 weeks. And so what you can do with technology when you're actually tracking from the growing, the cost of the seeds, the cost of the vegging, all the way until your final product, I guess maybe you don't need to go to flowering or your final packaging, but maybe wholesale, like finished product. You can see what you want to grow over time, because there is a trade-off there where if something takes 30% longer to grow, but you have a 30% higher yield, but it actually only commands a market price that's 40% lower than, let's say, strain A, then you can make your optimization on what you want to grow depending on what exactly your final value yield is for that strain. And it's something that only a few operators I've seen in California and really the United States actually have looked into. And in the beginning of these markets, margins are very thick. And so people are like, yeah, let's grow whatever and sell it and flip pounds. But as time goes on and strains become more accepted and more common, you're going to want to make a marginal trade-off, because that changes the unit economics of your business significantly, like in the millions of dollars range. So that's something that I think technology has it's an exciting amount of impact, and I think not enough people are looking at that trade-off, especially in the nascent industries like early markets. They start looking at it later when all the margins get crushed. But if you look at it earlier, you can completely take advantage of that market pricing dynamic.
Okay, thank you. There's a question that came in around crop steering and how technology is going to handle that or aid crop steering. So first, whoever wants to take this question, please go for it. But before we get into it, maybe we can define what is crop steering. Does anyone want to handle that? I'm not a cultivator.
I worked with a lot of cultivators in terms of their crop steering, mostly on the indoor side. Okay. And that's also kind of interesting to what I mentioned before, but we have a few friends in California who are very sophisticated crop growers, especially in the indoor space, where you can change the humidity, you can change the CO2 content, the nitrogen content. I know several growers that actually they'll grow one strain, but they'll sell it under many different SKUs because the phenotype expression of the plant changes on the tops, the mids, and the bottom of the buds. And so you can start to change the yields of your plants depending on what kind of environment you're subjecting it to and how you're stressing it out. And then you can also change the phenotype expression. So there's a lot of interesting aspects of, I guess, crop steering, crop modification, but I would say not many people really. Right.
And is AI going there? Yeah? Is that what's happening? So I'm pointing out a fellow tech geek in the crowd. He's a smart guy with this stuff, but so that's nice because AI, we can rely on AI and link into your crop steering brain of a computer, and that's going to pretty much grow your cannabis for you with no human interaction. With automated tools?
I would say eventually, yeah. That's where you're getting to, because the unfortunate thing is that many times the growers look at growing as an art form, and I think that's because of the traditional...
Is that unfortunate?
Honestly, I would say for the future of humanity, it is unfortunate.
How?
Because if we're ever going to optimize things, we have to look at more in a sophisticated, repeatable fashion and in a scientific way. Because if you're looking at it as an art form, it's not repeatable. Art by itself, subjective. Art is an expression.
Should cannabis always be a repeatable thing?
It's food.
Right, but I mean, apples are different everywhere. You get a different apple in Arkansas than you do in California, than you do in Spain, than you do in...
if I could jump...
I mean, I'm not really trying to get super deep into it, but...
No.
I'm sorry.
We could
One
talk
of the
about...
things that I've been noticing in the past couple of conferences, and I love science, and I'm not denigrating the science, and I understand that you want to be consistent and repeatable at all times, but plants don't work like that.
I would argue that.
Do you have a garden at home?
I do.
And you use the same techniques all the time for all your things?
My garden is not as well defined of an environment as I would like for me to create a repeatable fashion. But if we're going to aggressively service the cannabis market in a sophisticated way, then you're going to have to control all those variables. That's controlling the genetics, that's controlling the inputs, that's controlling the environment. But
that's also how you end up with only one sort of banana and it's dying out.
Yeah, but you also have the most amount of surplus food production in the world that humanity has ever seen. So.
Okay, I just put it out there so we can talk about it.
I mean, I do love boutique cannabis. It's great. Like I've seen. I mean,
can it all be boutique cannabis? I mean, there's not that many people. We can grow a lot of weed.
I mean, you can, but that's not really like a scalable thing, right? You're not going to be able to service the world's cannabis needs and destroy a black market that corrodes the fabric.
Okay, one, you don't need to destroy the black market. You can co-opt the black market, right? Hire some hippies. Get some growers who know what they're doing to be on your squad.
Oh, I mean,
right?
I want the black market to be white market.
Secondly, right? California has supplied damn near all of the United States for decades and decades before legalization happened. So I don't think that it's a scalable, like it's a problem of scale or it's a problem of we won't be able to grow enough weed if we don't use computers or make everything exactly right. Some of the challenges that I'm having with some of this newfangled weed is it tastes horrible. It tastes like computers grew it. I know we're kind of off topic, and I would love to talk to you about this a little later. I know we're running out of time. Please continue. I'm sorry.
Do you want to be in a profitable business or an unprofitable business? And I think that's the decision you have to be in.
Cannabis has been the most profitable decentralized business for decades.
Okay, in an unregulated market,
That's the thing, when it's unregulated, like I could play Monopoly with no rules, right?
I love playing Monopoly with no rules. I always win. Okay, are we almost done? All right, guys, we got 90 seconds left. Any random questions from the audience? Yeah, please.
I'll be quick. Eric Berlin from Denton's, and regardless of any representation that we have or actions against you, what you're doing is amazing. And I can say from the perspective of someone who's worked at the state level and now federal level for legalization, we would not have gotten as far as we've gotten without vaporization because of the stigma of the smell and the access to the product. So I thank you for that. And my question is, and those, I think, are radical changes that have changed the whole marketplace. Even though I know everyone here likes smoking weed, the fact that we could legislate on without that was really helpful. So where do you see it 10 years from now? I know we have little time, but like, what's the change? How are we going to be growing cannabis or using cannabis in 10 years that maybe not everyone here is picturing?
Ooh. Have it hooked up directly to your HVAC. No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I believe in 10 years we still will partially smoke weed, and a lot of it will be vaporized weed. And thank you for the comment. Yeah, it's true. If you receive today a jar of dried flowers, you don't know, as a patient at least, you don't know what to do with it. You can roll a joint, but it's not an acceptable medical application. You can make a cookie, a tea, but really the only validated version how to applicate it is by vaporization, by a medical device.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think we're out of time.
All right, guys, look.
Hey, that was great. Thank you, though. Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say, Chris?
I was going to say thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I just have a very quick question. Are you definitely going to extend your license for the Mighty Medic and for the Volcano in 2024? Because I'm worried that the medical market for flower will be otherwise dead if you don't have a vaporizer to prescribe.
Yeah, you refer to the deadline of the medical device regulation, a new one. Of course, we are working on it, and we will remain in the market with medical device. Yes, as you said, it's absolutely necessary to have this option available, and Stars & Bickel is still the only one who is providing it.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Let's hear it for the panel. I appreciate you, and thanks, man.